What would you do if you lost everything? Your career, your reputation, your hope, and found yourself freezing to death in a blizzard, only to be rescued by the most powerful and dangerous man in the territory. Today's story is about Kathy, a skilled nurse who defended herself against assault and lost everything, meeting Kong Min, the enigmatic leader of the Double T Empire, at a snow-covered transportation hub during the brutal winter. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. The wind howled like a wounded animal across the transportation hub's platform, carrying sheets of snow that cut like tiny blades against exposed skin. The gas lamps flickered desperately, their warm glow barely penetrating the white curtain of the blizzard that had shut down all travel across Utah territory. And Kathy sat huddled on a frost-covered bench, her thin gray coat doing almost nothing against the savage cold. Her fingers, once steady enough to thread the finest surgical sutures, trembled violently as she clutched a worn leather medical bag to her chest. The bag was all she had left. Everything else was gone. She was going to die here. The thought came to her with surprising clarity, almost peaceful in its certainty. Her lips had lost all feeling an hour ago. Her toes were numb inside her inadequate boots. No trains were running. No carriages. The hub was deserted except for the ghosts of her failed life swirling in the snow around her. And had been in Salt Lake City for 3 weeks now, having fled Philadelphia with nothing but her nursing certificate and the clothes on her back. She'd come west hoping the frontier would be more forgiving, that distance would erase the scandal. She'd been naive. Dr. Richard Harrison's lies had traveled faster than any train. Hysterical, he'd told the medical board. Unstable. Made advances toward me and became violent when rejected. The truth, that he'd cornered her in the supply room, that his hands had been on her throat, that she'd driven a scalpel into his shoulder to escape, didn't matter. He was a respected physician. She was just a nurse, a woman. The cold was making her drowsy now. That was dangerous, she knew. Sleep in this weather meant never waking up. But her body was so tired of fighting, tired of running, tired of hoping. Then she heard footsteps, heavy, deliberate, crunching through the snow, and forced her eyes open, squinting through the blizzard. A figure emerged from the white chaos, and for a moment she thought she was hallucinating. No one could look that solid, that real, in this ghostly storm. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders draped in a black wool overcoat that must have cost more than and had earned in a year. The coat fell to his knees, lined with what looked like fur at the collar. Snow gathered on the brim of his black hat, but beneath it, she could make out strong features. A sharp jaw, intense dark eyes that seemed to cut through the storm as easily as they cut through her. This was a man who commanded attention, who demanded it, even freezing to death, and felt a flutter of something in her chest that wasn't just her struggling heartbeat. He stopped a few feet away, studying her with an expression she couldn't read. Not pity exactly. Something more complicated, more interested. You're going to freeze to death out here. His voice was deep, touched with an accent she couldn't quite place. Something Asian, maybe Korean, but smoothed over with years in America. The combination was striking, authoritative. I'm aware, and managed through chattering teeth. Her pride flared even in extremis. She wouldn't beg. His eyes dropped to the medical bag clutched against her chest. You're a nurse. It wasn't a question, but and nodded anyway. Was. I don't know anymore. Something shifted in his expression. He stepped closer, and caught the scent of expensive cologne, tobacco, and something else, leather and pine and power. He crouched down so they were eye level, and the intensity of his gaze made her breath catch. What's your name? Kathy. I'm Kong Min. He said it simply, as if she should know the name. And truthfully, even in her 3 weeks in Utah, she'd heard whispers about the Double T Empire, about the man who controlled it. People spoke of Kong Min the way they might speak of a force of nature, with respect, with fear, with fascination. You're him, she whispered. The what? His lips quirked slightly. The gangster? The tyrant? The millionaire? I've heard them all. I was going to say the employer of half the territory. That earned her a genuine smile, brief but stunning. More than half. Stand up. I can't. You can. It was a command, gentle but absolute. He rose and extended his hand, gloved in fine black leather. You will. And stared at that outstretched hand. It felt like more than an offer of help. It felt like a choice. A door opening in the storm. She could refuse, could stay here and let the cold take her. Let Dr. Harrison's lies be the final word on her life. Or she could take this stranger's hand and see what came next. Her fingers closed around his, and he pulled her up with surprising gentleness. Her legs nearly buckled, but his other hand caught her elbow, steadying her. The warmth of his touch, even through the gloves, made her want to weep. Where are you taking me? She asked as he began guiding her away from the bench. Somewhere warm. Somewhere safe. The Grand Executive Hotel. Anne's steps faltered. I can't afford. I can. He glanced down at her, and there was something in his eyes that made her pulse quicken for reasons that had nothing to do with the cold. Consider it an investment. In what? You. The Grand Executive Hotel rose from the snowy streets like a palace, all gleaming windows and ornate stonework. The doorman's eyes widened when he saw Kong Min, and he snapped to attention so quickly he nearly dropped his cane. Mr. Kong, sir. We weren't expecting. The Crimson Suite. Now. And send for hot water, food, and brandy. Of course, sir. Right away. And found herself swept into a lobby that was all marble floors and crystal chandeliers. More luxury than she'd seen in her entire life. Wealthy patrons in fine evening were stopped their conversations to stare as Kong Min guided her. This half-frozen, bedraggled woman, across the floor like she was royalty. The suite was on the top floor, and when Kong Min opened the door and actually gasped, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the snow-blanketed city. A massive fireplace already crackled with flames. Rich burgundy fabrics draped everywhere. Curtains, upholstery, the enormous bed in the adjoining room. Sit by the fire, Kong Min instructed, shrugging out of his coat. Beneath it he wore an impeccably tailored three-piece suit in charcoal gray, the vest embroidered with subtle patterns that caught the firelight, and lowered herself into a chair so plush it felt like sitting on a cloud. The heat from the fire was almost painful against her frozen skin, but she leaned toward it greedily. Kong Min poured 2 glasses of brandy from a crystal decanter, pressed one into her trembling hands, then settled into the chair across from her. He studied her with that same intense focus, and then felt uncomfortably exposed. Tell me what happened, he said quietly. How does a trained nurse end up freezing to death at a transportation hub? And took a long sip of brandy, feeling the burn travel down her throat. The alcohol loosened something in her, or maybe it was the warmth, or maybe it was just that she had nothing left to lose. I was assaulted, she said flatly, by a doctor I worked with in Philadelphia, Dr. Richard Harrison. He cornered me in a supply room, put his hands on me. I defended myself, stabbed him in the shoulder with a scalpel. Kong Min's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flashed in his eyes. Good. The simple approval in that word nearly undid her, and had to blink back sudden tears. The medical board didn't think so. He told them I was the aggressor, that I was unstable. They revoked my certification, blacklisted me from every hospital in Philadelphia. So you came west. I thought maybe out here, no one would know. No one would care. I was wrong. Her voice cracked. His lies followed me. 3 weeks of trying to find work, and nothing. I spent my last dollar on a ticket to Ogden. Thought maybe I could find something there. Then the blizzard hit and... She gestured helplessly. Kong Min was quiet for a long moment, swirling the brandy in his glass. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. In my organization, and we judge people by their actions, not by the lies others tell about them. A man who attacks a woman deserves what he gets. A woman who defends herself deserves respect. Your organization? The Double T Empire. I assume you've heard of it. I've heard rumors. Let me tell you facts. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and the firelight cast shadows across his face that made him look like something from a storybook. A dark prince, dangerous and alluring. I came to America from Korea with nothing 20 years ago. I was 16. Built the Double T from the ground up, ranching at first, then mining, then timber, then other ventures. I employ over 3,000 people across Utah Territory. I own property from here to the Nevada border. I have influence with governors, senators, businessmen. And enemies? And asked softly. His smile was sharp. Many, which is precisely why I need someone like you. Anne's heart began to pound. What do you mean? My empire requires a dedicated medical professional. Someone skilled, trustworthy, who can tend to my people. Someone who can be discreet. He paused. I heard there was a trained nurse looking for work. I came to the hub tonight specifically to find you, and stared at him. You sought me out. I make it my business to know things. He set down his glass and stood, moving to the window. Against the snowy backdrop, he looked like a portrait. Powerful, solitary, magnetic. I'm offering you a position, and chief nurse of the Double T Empire. You'll have your own residence within the compound, state-of-the-art facilities, anything you need. You'll oversee medical care for all my employees, handle emergencies, maintain health records. And what would you want in return? He turned to face her, and the look in his eyes made her breath stop. Loyalty, discretion, excellence. He crossed the room slowly, each step deliberate, until he stood before her chair, and had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. And I want to be honest with you about something else. What? I'm attracted to you, Anne. His voice was low, intimate. From the moment I saw you sitting in that blizzard, clutching that medical bag like it was all you had left in the world, I felt something. Your strength, your refusal to beg or plead, the fire in you even when you were freezing to death. Anne's pulse was racing now. Mr. Kong. But, he continued firmly, your position in my organization is secure regardless of your personal feelings toward me. You can accept this job and tell me you're not interested, and nothing changes. You'll still have the position, the residence, the security. I will not use my power over you. Do you understand? She did understand, and something in her chest loosened. This was real. He was offering her a future, with no strings attached except professional ones. And yet, I understand, she whispered, and I accept the position, and the rest, and stood, bringing them almost chest to chest. Even through her exhaustion and cold-numbed senses, she felt the pull between them. I don't know yet, but I'd like to find out. His hand came up to cup her cheek, warm and gentle. Fair enough. For now, you need rest. Stay here tonight. Tomorrow I'll take you to the Empire, show you what will be yours. The touch of his hand on her face felt like a promise, like a beginning. The Double T Empire compound was nothing like Anne had imagined. She'd pictured a ranch, maybe a large house. Instead, Kong Min's carriage brought them through guarded gates to what could only be described as a private city. Main buildings stretched across hundreds of acres. Administrative offices, housing for workers, massive barns and equipment structures, and at the center, a mansion that took Anne's breath away. 3 stories of elegant stonework and tall windows, surrounded by manicured grounds now covered in pristine snow. This is headquarters, Kong Min explained as they rode through. 500 people live and work within these gates. Another 2,000 spread across our various operations. And noticed armed men at regular intervals, all wearing the same uniform. Dark coats with a distinctive Double T brand on the shoulder. They snapped to attention as Kong Min's carriage passed. Your security is impressive. Necessary. I've made enemies building this empire. Some people don't appreciate a Korean immigrant achieving what I have. Others resent my methods. He glanced at her. I won't lie to you, Anne. Not everything we do is strictly legal. But we have rules. We don't harm innocents. We protect our own. And we deal harshly with anyone who breaks our code. Should I be afraid? Of me? Never. Of what I can do to protect you? Maybe a little. The carriage stopped before an elegant 2-story building separate from the main mansion. Kong Min helped Anne down, his hand lingering at her waist longer than strictly necessary. This is yours, he said, gesturing to the building. The medical center. Your office and examination rooms are on the 1st floor. Your private quarters upstairs. And walked up the steps in a daze. Inside, the medical center was beyond anything she could have imagined. Examination tables with clean linens. Glass-fronted cabinets stocked with supplies and medications. Modern instruments gleaming under gas lamps. An operating theater with viewing windows. Kong Min, she breathed. It's perfect. You haven't seen your quarters yet. Upstairs was an apartment of such luxury, and wanted to weep. A spacious bedroom with a canopy bed and thick carpets. A sitting room with books and comfortable furniture. A private bathroom with running water, and a deep porcelain tub. If you need anything changed, tell me, Kong Min said from the doorway. This is your home now. I want you to be comfortable," and turned to him, overwhelmed. "Why are you doing this?" "I'm no one. A disgraced nurse with nothing." He crossed the room to her, and the intensity in his eyes made her knees weak. "You're wrong. You're someone who fought back. Someone who survived. Someone who refused to let cruel men define her." His hand came up to brush a strand of hair from her face. "And you're someone I think I could fall in love with if you'd let me." The honesty in his words, the vulnerability beneath the powerful exterior, broke something open in Anne's chest. She rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his. Tentative at first, then deeper as his arms came around her, pulling her close. The kiss was everything. Heat and promise, hunger and tenderness, the meeting of two wounded souls finding unexpected shelter in each other. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kong Min rested his forehead against hers. "I want to do this right," he murmured. "Court you properly. Let you settle in, learn the empire, decide if I am truly what you want. And if I already know." And whispered, "Then we take it slow anyway. Because you deserve romance, and Kathy. You deserve to be wooed." Over the following weeks, and threw herself into her work, the people of the Double T Empire quickly learned that their new chief nurse was not to be trifled with. She was exacting, thorough, and utterly fearless. Tom Bradley, the grizzled foreman who'd been with Kong Min since the beginning, brought his men in for mandatory health screenings. They grumbled until and fixed a dislocation that had plagued one worker for months, stitched up another's infected wound that he'd been hiding, and diagnosed a third with early signs of pneumonia that would have killed him within weeks. "She's got magic hands, boss," Tom told Kong Min with undisguised admiration. The men would walk through fire for her now. Kong Min, watching and work through the window of the medical center, smiled. "Good. So would I." He courted her like he'd promised, with patience and intensity both. Dinners in the mansion's private dining room. Just the two of them, talking late into the night about everything and nothing. Rides through the snowy territory on horseback, and wrapped in furs that Kong Min insisted she keep. Quiet mornings where he'd appear at her door with fresh pastries and coffee, stealing kisses before heading off to manage his vast enterprises. The attraction between them grew into something deeper, richer, and learned that beneath Kong Min's dangerous reputation was a man who'd fought for every inch of what he'd built, who valued loyalty above all, who could be ruthless with enemies but gentle with those he loved. Kong Min discovered that Anne's sharp mind was matched only by her compassionate heart, that she challenged him in ways no one else dared, that her laughter could light up even his darkest moods. But they hadn't yet taken things further than heated kisses and stolen touches. Kong Min was true to his word about doing things right, even when the tension between them crackled like lightning. Then came the night that changed everything. A frantic pounding on Anne's door jolted her awake. She grabbed her robe and rushed downstairs to find Tom Bradley, face pale, supporting a young man who was barely conscious. "It's Danny," Tom gasped. "One of the mine supports collapsed. He's hurt bad, miss, and real bad." Anne's training took over instantly. She helped them get Danny onto the examination table, her hands already assessing. The young man, barely 20, was bleeding from a severe head wound, his leg twisted at an unnatural angle, and when she checked his abdomen, her heart sank. Internal bleeding, possibly a ruptured spleen or damaged liver. He needed surgery. "Now, we need to get him to a hospital in the city," Tom said desperately. "He'll die before we get him there," and said flatly, "The compound hospital is closer, but still too far. I need to operate here. Now, miss, and you can't. I can, and I will. Get me boiling water, clean linens, and someone find Kong Min, tell him I need chloroform from his private stores." Kong Min burst through the door 10 minutes later, coat half-buttoned, hair disheveled. "And what do you need?" "The chloroform. And then I need you to trust me." She looked up from where she was scrubbing her hands. "I'm going to perform abdominal surgery. It's risky, but he's dying. This is his only chance." Their eyes met across the room. In that moment, she saw absolute faith in his gaze. "Tell me what to do," he said simply. For the next 3 hours, and operated with Kong Min as her assistant. Her hands were steady, her focus absolute. She located the ruptured spleen, clamped bleeders, sutured tissue with precision that would have made her Philadelphia professors weep with pride. Kong Min watched her work with awe. This wasn't in her element, powerful, brilliant, unstoppable. Every doubt he'd ever had about bringing her into his world evaporated. She belonged here. She belonged with him. When finally stepped back, exhausted but triumphant, Danny's breathing was steady. The color was returning to his face. He would live. You saved him, Kong Min said softly, and stripped off her bloodied gloves, swaying slightly. We saved him. He caught her as her knees buckled, swept her into his arms like she weighed nothing. You need rest. I need you, she whispered, and the raw honesty in her voice undid him. Kong Min carried her upstairs to her bedroom, laid her gently on the bed. But when he tried to pull away, her hand caught his wrist. Stay, and whispered. Please. He stretched out beside her, pulling her into his arms. She buried her face against his chest, and he felt wetness seeping through his shirt. I was so scared, she admitted, voice muffled. What if I'd failed? What if he'd died? But he didn't. You saved him, Anne. You're extraordinary. She pulled back to look at him, tears streaking her face. I love you, she said. I know it's fast, I know it's crazy, but I love you, Kong Min. His hand cupped her face tenderly. It's not crazy. It's the sanest thing in my life. I love you too. I think I have since I saw you in that blizzard, refusing to surrender even when you had every reason to. He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. And when she pulled him closer, deepening the kiss, he didn't resist. They had waited long enough. But their happiness was short-lived. 2 weeks after Danny's miraculous recovery, a man arrived at the compound gates demanding an audience with Kong Min. Dr. Richard Harrison had found them, and felt the blood drain from her face when Kong Min's security brought Harrison into the main office where she'd been reviewing supply orders. The doctor looked older, grayer, but his eyes were still full of malice. So this is where you've been hiding, Libby, Harrison sneered, using her old name. Playing nurse for a criminal enterprise. Kong Min, who had been sitting at his desk, rose slowly. His presence seemed to fill the room, and then saw Harrison's bravado falter slightly. Dr. Harrison, I presume, Kong Min said coldly, and told me about you, about what you did to her. What Harrison sputtered. She's a liar and a criminal. She assaulted me. You attacked her. She defended herself. Kong Min's voice was ice. Now you've come all this way to what? Threaten her? Intimidate her? I've come to inform the Territorial Medical Board that an unlicensed, dangerous woman is practicing medicine illegally. I have evidence that she performed surgery on one of your employees without proper certification. Anne's heart stopped. If the medical board investigated, if they found out about Danny. But Kong Min merely smiled. It was a terrifying smile. Is that so? Well then, I suppose we'll have to handle this officially. Tom, would you fetch the sheriff? Harrison paled. The sheriff? Oh yes. Sheriff Matthews is a good friend. We'll let him sort out these accusations. Kong Min's smile widened. And while we're at it, I have some interesting information about your time in Philadelphia. Financial improprieties. Missing medications from your hospital. And 3 other nurses who've come forward with allegations similar to Anne's. Strange how these things come to light when you have the resources to investigate properly. Harrison's face went white, then red. You're bluffing. Try me. For a long moment, the 2 men stared at each other. Then Harrison broke, spinning on his heel and fleeing the office. He'll still file complaints, and said softly, once Harrison was gone. Let him. We'll handle it. Kong Min came to her, wrapped his arms around her. I won't let him hurt you again. I promise. But the legal battle that followed was grueling. Harrison filed formal complaints with the Territorial Medical Board, questioning Anne's certification and right to practice. He dredged up the Philadelphia scandal, twisted it in every conceivable way. The board scheduled a hearing for late spring, once the snow cleared, and prepared her defense with quiet determination, gathering testimonials from everyone she'd treated. Danny, fully recovered, swore he'd testify on her behalf. Tom Bradley rounded up 24 workers willing to speak about her skills. The night before the hearing, and couldn't sleep. She stood at her bedroom window, looking out at the snow-covered compound, wondering if this would be the end of everything. Kong Min found her there. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, rested his chin on her shoulder. Whatever happens tomorrow, he murmured, you're not alone anymore. I'll fight for you. My entire empire will fight for you. And turned in his arms, looking up at this powerful, dangerous, tender man who'd become her whole world. Why? Why risk so much for me? Because you're mine, he said simply. And I protect what's mine. Always. The hearing was held in the Territorial Courthouse, a grand building in Salt Lake City. and walked in wearing a simple but elegant dress that Kong Min had commissioned for her, her head held high. Harrison sat on one side with his lawyers, smug and confident. On Anne's side sat Kong Min, Tom Bradley, Danny, and a whole contingent of Double T Empire workers who'd taken the day off to support her. The hearing began with Harrison's accusations, painting Anne as unstable, dangerous, a woman who'd attacked him and fled west to continue practicing illegally. Then it was Anne's turn. One by one, her patients testified. Danny, standing on his repaired leg, described how Anne had saved his life when no one else could have. Tom Bradley spoke of her dedication, her skill, her compassion. A miner's wife tearfully recounted how Anne had delivered her baby during a difficult breech birth, saving both mother and child. The testimonials went on for hours. The judge, a stern-faced man named Whitmore, listened to everything with an impassive expression. Finally, Anne herself took the stand. She told her story with calm honesty. The assault, the defense, the injustice of the medical board's decision. She spoke of her work at the Double T, of the lives saved, the care given. "I became a nurse to help people," she said quietly. "That's all I've ever wanted to do. Dr. Harrison tried to destroy that because I rejected him, because I fought back. But I won't let his lies define me anymore. I'm a good nurse. No, I'm an excellent nurse. And these people," she gestured to the workers filling the courtroom, "they know it." When she finished, even the judge looked moved. Then Kong Min dropped the final piece. He presented evidence his investigators had gathered, financial records showing Harrison's embezzlement, sworn statements from other nurses he'd harassed, medical board documents proving a pattern of covering up his misconduct. Harrison's lawyers tried to object, but the damage was done. Harrison himself looked ready to bolt. Judge Whitmore called a recess. 2 agonizing hours passed. When he returned, his expression was thoughtful. "I've reviewed all the evidence and testimony," he began. "This case presents a complex situation. However, what's clear to me is that Miss Kathy is an exceptionally skilled medical practitioner who has saved numerous lives." Anne's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "the allegations against Dr. Harrison are deeply troubling and warrant their own investigation. It appears Miss Kathy was the victim of a coordinated attempt to destroy her career after defending herself from assault." Harrison stood. "Your Honor, this is—" "Sit down, Dr. Harrison. I'm not finished." The judge's voice was sharp. He turned to Anne. "Miss Kathy, based on the evidence presented here today and the testimony of your patients, I am granting you an official territorial medical license. Additionally, I'm recommending that the Philadelphia Medical Board review Dr. Harrison's conduct and the circumstances of your original censure." The courtroom erupted in cheers. Anne felt her knees go weak, but Kong Min's arms were there, catching her, holding her up. "You did it," he whispered fiercely in her ear. "You won." She had won. After everything, she had won. That night, Kong Min hosted a massive celebration at the Empire. Every worker was invited. The mansion lit up like a palace, food and drink flowing freely. But midway through the festivities, he pulled Anne away to the mansion's private study. "I have something for you," he said, his hands trembling slightly, the only sign of nervousness she'd ever seen from him. He pulled out a small velvet box, and Anne's breath caught. "I was going to wait," he said, opening it to reveal a stunning diamond ring. "Plan some elaborate romantic gesture. But I've learned something from you, and life is too short to wait for perfect moments. We make our own moments." He dropped to one knee, and Anne felt tears streaming down her face. "And Kathy, you walked into my life during a blizzard and brought light into places I didn't even know were dark. You're brilliant, courageous, compassionate, and so damn stubborn it drives me crazy. You've made my empire better, my people healthier, and my heart fuller than I ever thought possible." His voice cracked slightly. "Will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my partner, my equal in everything?" "Yes," and sobbed, dropping to her knees in front of him. "Yes, yes, yes." He slid the ring onto her finger and kissed her deeply, both of them kneeling on the study floor, holding each other like they'd never let go. "I love you," he murmured against her lips. "I love you too. So much." They were married a month later in a ceremony that became legendary across the territory. The entire Double T Empire attended, along with businessmen, politicians, and dignitaries from across the West, and wore a gown of white silk and lace, and when Kong Min saw her walking down the aisle, his eyes filled with tears. The ceremony was held in the compound's newly built chapel, and when they exchanged vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the building. "I vow to protect you, cherish you, and stand beside you through every challenge," Kong Min said, his voice steady despite his emotion. "You are my heart, my home, my everything. I vow to love you, heal you when you're hurt, and be your partner in building a life that matters," Anne replied, her hands clasped in his. "You saved me that night at the transportation hub. Every day since, you've given me reasons to live, to hope, to love. I'm yours, Kong Min. Always." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, the kiss they shared was tender and passionate both, a promise of all the years to come. The years that followed were rich and full, and became not just the chief nurse, but Kong Min's most trusted advisor. Her sharp mind and compassionate heart influenced every decision he made, tempering his harder edges, guiding the empire toward more ethical practices. She established the territory's first modern medical facility, a state-of-the-art hospital that served not just empire workers, but the entire region. The nursing school she founded trained hundreds of women, giving them skills and independence they'd never had before. Kong Min, inspired by Anne's commitment to community, used his resources to found the town of Thornton, Utah, a planned community with modern infrastructure, schools, and medical care for all his workers and their families. Together, they became a power couple known throughout the West. Where once Kong Min's empire had been feared, now it was also respected. Anne's influence softened the organization's rough edges while never compromising its strength. They had 3 children: Thomas, a serious boy with his father's intensity and his mother's compassion; Jackson Jr., charming and wild like young Kong Min had been; and Rebecca, brilliant and fierce, who would grow up to become a surgeon herself. The conflict with Dr. Harrison ended with a whimper rather than a bang. The Philadelphia Medical Board, prompted by Judge Whitmore's recommendation and Kong Min's evidence, launched a full investigation. Harrison was stripped of his license and faced criminal charges for embezzlement and assault. He died in disgrace, alone and forgotten, while Anne's name was cleared completely. But the sweetest vindication came years later, when Anne was invited to speak at a medical conference in Philadelphia. She stood before an audience of doctors and nurses, including several of her old colleagues, and delivered a speech on frontier medicine that received a standing ovation. After the speech, 3 of the nurses who'd testified against Harrison approached her with tears in their eyes. "We're so sorry," one whispered. "We were cowards. We should have supported you," and took her hand gently. "You were afraid. I understand. But you're here now. That matters." Forgiveness came easily too in these days. How could it not, when her life was so full of love and purpose? As the years passed and Anne and Kong Min grew older, their love only deepened. Where once there had been passion and heat, now there was also profound companionship, shared memories, the comfort of 2 souls who knew each other completely. They would sit on the porch of their mansion in the evenings, watching the sun set over the empire they'd built together, hands intertwined. "Do you ever regret it?" Kong Min asked one evening when they were both in their 60s. "Leaving Philadelphia? Everything that happened." And looked at her husband, silver now threaded through his dark hair, lines of wisdom etched around his eyes, but still devastatingly handsome to her. "Not for a single moment. That night in the blizzard was the worst moment of my life, and the beginning of the best. How could I regret that?" He lifted her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles tenderly. "I was so afraid that night. Afraid you'd refuse my help. Afraid I'd be too late." "You're never too late," she whispered. "You arrived exactly when you were supposed to." Their children grew and flourished. Thomas took over much of the empire's operations, running it with his father's strength and his mother's ethics. Jackson Jr. became a lawyer, fighting for workers' rights and territorial reform. Rebecca attended medical school in Boston and returned to expand her mother's hospital into one of the finest medical facilities in the West. The Double T Empire evolved under their guidance. What had once operated in moral gray areas became a model of responsible business practices. Kong Min's reputation shifted from feared kingpin to respected patriarch. People spoke of him with admiration now. The immigrant who'd built an empire, yes, but also the man who'd used that empire to lift up his community. And through it all, and was by his side, the freezing nurse who'd become a legend in her own right. The woman who'd transformed frontier medicine. The wife who transformed a dangerous man into a beloved leader. On their 50th wedding anniversary, The town of Thornton threw them a celebration that brought people from across the country. Governor, senators, businessmen, and simple workers all came to honor the couple who'd changed Utah territory forever. When Kong Min stood to give a speech, his voice was still strong despite his years. 50 years ago, I found a woman freezing to death at a transportation hub during the worst blizzard this territory had ever seen. I thought I was saving her life that night. He turned to Anne, who sat beside him with tears in her eyes. I didn't know she was saving mine. The crowd erupted in applause, but Kong Min only had eyes for his wife. And Kathy and Kong, you took a broken, hardened man and showed him what love could be. You took an empire built on fear and transformed it into something that matters. You've saved thousands of lives with your hands, but you saved my soul with your heart. His voice broke slightly. I love you. I have loved you every day since that blizzard. And I will love you beyond my last breath. And stood and walked into his arms, and when they kissed, the crowd's cheers shook the rafters. After 50 years, their love still made people believe in magic. They died within hours of each other, both in their 80s, in the bedroom they'd shared for 5 decades. Kong Min went first, peacefully in his sleep, Anne's hand clasped in his. And Anne, who'd always known her own body so well, felt her heart slow as it stopped. Wait for me, she whispered to him, though he was already gone. I'm coming. And she closed her eyes and followed him into whatever came next, secure in the knowledge that if there was an afterlife, he'd be there waiting with that intense gaze and that slight smile, ready to take her hand once more. Their funeral was one of the largest the West had ever seen. Thousands came to pay respects. People whose lives they'd touched, whose families they'd helped, whose world they'd changed. Thomas, giving the eulogy, his voice thick with emotion, told the story one more time. The blizzard, the transportation hub, the freezing nurse, and the millionaire who stopped to help her. My parents' love story became a legend, he said, looking out at the sea of faces. But it was more than just a romance. It was a partnership that built hospitals, schools, and communities. It was a love that proved kindness was stronger than cruelty, that courage could overcome injustice, that 2 broken people could heal each other and then heal the world around them. He paused, wiping his eyes. They used to say that their love made history. But what really made history was what they did with that love. How they used it to lift others up. How they refused to let their own pain make them bitter. How they chose, every single day, to be better together than they ever could have been apart. Rebecca stood and joined her brother at the podium. Our mother used to tell us that the night she met our father, she'd lost all hope. She was ready to let the cold take her. But he reached out his hand, and she chose to take it. She chose to live. She chose to trust. She chose to love. And in doing so, Jackson Jr. added, joining his siblings, she didn't just change one life. She changed thousands. Because that's what love does when you let it. It ripples outward. It transforms everything it touches. They buried Anne and Kong Min side by side on a hill overlooking the Double T Empire compound, beneath a shared headstone that read simply, Kong Min and Anne and Kathy Kong, 2 souls who found each other in a blizzard and built an empire of love. For years afterward, people would visit the grave, leaving flowers and notes. Young couples would come seeking blessings for their own relationships. Nurses would pay respects to the woman who'd paved their way. Businessmen would honor the immigrant who'd shown them ethical success was possible. And on winter nights, when the snow fell thick and fast over Utah, people swore you could sometimes see 2 figures walking hand in hand through the blizzard. Him tall and strong in his black coat, her with her medical bag clutched close, both of them smiling as they disappeared into the swirling white. The story of Kong Min and became the stuff of legend. It was told in nursing schools and business classes, in history books and romance novels. But the heart of it remained simple and true. On a freezing night during the winter of 1887, a powerful man stopped to help a desperate woman. And from that single act of kindness, love bloomed, fierce and tender, passionate and enduring. It changed 2 lives, built an empire, transformed a territory, and proved that sometimes the greatest adventures really do begin with a single act of compassion. Their great-grandchildren still run the Kong Medical Facilities and the Kong Foundation, organizations that provide health care and education across the West. The town of Thornton thrives, a model community that draws visitors from around the world. And every winter, on the anniversary of that fateful night, the city holds the Blizzard Ball, a celebration of love, second chances, and the magic that happens when you reach out your hand to someone in need. Because that's what An and Kongmin taught everyone who knew their story. Love isn't just about romance. It's about seeing someone at their lowest moment and choosing to lift them up. It's about building something together that's greater than either of you alone. It's about courage and faith and refusing to give up, even when the storm seems endless. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, it's about finding the one person in all the world who sees you, really sees you, and loves you anyway, who takes your hand in the midst of a blizzard and leads you home. That's what made their love legendary. That's what made their love last forever. The end. In loving memory of all those who found hope in darkness, who've been saved by a stranger's kindness, and who've had the courage to take an outstretched hand and see where it leads. May we all be so lucky to find a love that changes not just our lives, but the world around us.